Hi, James with the 1HourSmartHome.com here, and today we're here to talk to you about how to keep your pipes from freezing without heat. So you may have ended up in this situation if your furnace has gone bad, maybe you've got a house that's closing and the utilities aren't hooked up. Whatever the reason is that you don't have heat, you do not want to let your pipes freeze in a cold climate because things can get a lot worse. So we've got 5 ways here that you can keep your pipes from freezing without heat. Number 1, if you are there at the house, you can run the water. So you just open up the faucets, run them at like a slight drip, both the hot and the cold water. It's really important to have both of them up and let that water float. That's going to prevent the pipes from freezing. Now, if the temperature is right at 32, you're probably okay not running the pipes, but once you start to go a little bit lower than that, you want to have the movement in the pipes to keep them from freezing. And the other thing that you need to take note about this is if you are not living at the house and you were to do this, you do run the risk that the actual drain pipes can freeze if you're not sending enough water down there. And what then happens is it backs up and you can have like an icicle in your drain pipe and it can back up and then you're gonna have a flood in your house anyway. So you gotta be careful with this. I would only do this if you are at the house and it is occupied and you can keep an eye on it every couple hours. Number 2, turn off the water at the shutoff main or the shutoff valve. So every house has a main shutoff coming in. Usually it's in the basement, might be in a utility closet. Wherever it is, if you turn that main shutoff off, it will turn off all the water to the house. There will be no more flow through the house. But what you need to do when you turn off the water main is that you can drain the water from the pipes. You have to do this. You have to drain the water out of the pipes by going to the lowest point in the house and opening a faucet or spigot and letting all the water throughout your house drain back out through the pipes. Because otherwise, if you turn the water off but leave the water in there, there's still water in there. And when it freezes, it's going to expand and it's going to break your pipes. So it's really important that when you turn the water off at the shutoff valve or the shutoff main, that you drain all the water out of that. So, the easiest way to do is open up a spigot, and you're going to want to open up faucets other places in the house because it lets the air bubbles out and lets it drain out faster. So for most houses, this will probably take you like 10-15 minutes for all the water to drain out. So that's the best way to get your house. If you're going to be gone for an extended period of time or you're not going to have heat for an extended period of time, you want to make sure that you shut that water off at the shutoff main. Now, the shutoff main could still freeze, but because it's a larger diameter pipe, it's less likely to freeze. It's going to take a longer time to freeze. So you can also protect that a little bit better from freezing with another option here, which is a space heater or a space heater and a generator. If you don't have heat because your furnace just went down, space heater, it's going to work fine. You can use that to make sure that your pipes don't freeze when you shut off the water, or even in some locations where that maybe you have pipes that might freeze, like an exterior wall or underneath your kitchen sink and stuff like that. Now, if your heat isn't working because you don't have any kind of power to your house, then well, you're going to need to get a generator or use a generator. You don't need a very big generator in order to run a space heater. So, if you just wanted to keep your water shut off, your main water shaft from freezing, you get a space heater and a generator, run an extension cord, and really just heat that main area, turn off the water, drain everything else out. And you're not even gonna have to run that continuously. You could just probably run it every couple hours to make sure things stay above freezing in that location and kind of keep things going. So that is an option. Or if you have multiple space heaters, that's fine. And you might say, well, getting a space heater is expensive. Yes, it is, but it's way more expensive if you have pipes freezing and you've got to clean up the water. It's a way bigger mess. So even if you had to run out and buy a couple space heaters to get some key spots, the temperature up, so at least that you're not at freezing, that's probably worth it compared to flooding your entire house. Number 4, run your fireplace. If you have a fireplace, a lot of gas fireplaces, even if your heater went out, the gas fireplace is still going to work. So you could just circulate that hot air with some fans. And that's going to help actually keep at least the temperature. It's not going to be comfortable, but if it keeps it up like at 32 or above 32 or even right at 32, that's way better than having it all the way down at 15 degrees or whatever it is outside. So using your fireplace and fans is a great option. If you've got a wood burning fireplace, obviously you can run that independent if you have gas service or not. So that's also a good way to do it. Now, you don't want to like blow a fan right into the fire and create a whole bunch of embers, but like if you've got it a couple feet away and you don't have it pointing right at the fire, but you've got it drawing the air out, the warm air, and circulating it around the room from feet away where it's a safe distance, that's a good thing to do and can keep your pipes from freezing. And then open up the cabinets to help yourself from getting those pipes frozen. Now, the last one, number 5, is monitor the temperature. And this is as simple as you could monitor the temperature with, just a cheap thermometer that you get at the drugstore, that's just going to show you if it's 32 degrees or if it's above that. And you'd be surprised. While it may feel really cold in your house, sometimes with, the sunlight, the insulation in the house, people moving around, electronic devices in there, even if your heat is out, you might get above 32 degrees a lot of the time. And you could just monitor it with one of those cheap thermometers. Now, there are other options that you can use to monitor the temperature. Security systems, there's temperature monitors that are digital. With the Ring security system, you could monitor the temperature. And even if you didn't have electricity, that alarm system will let you monitor the temperature, flood or freeze. It'll tell you if it gets to 40 degrees or below. And it's got 24 or 48 hour backup. And that's going to let you monitor the temperature even in the event of a power outage. And if your Wi-Fi's out, it also has cellular backup. So you could remotely monitor the temperature just to make sure everything's good with that flood and freeze sensor in the Ring security system. So that's one option. Or you could just go spend a couple bucks and get a typical thermometer you find at your local store. And that's a good way to monitor it. So you don't have to worry about it as much, because even though it may feel really cold, it might not necessarily be freezing. So these are the 5 ways that you can keep your pipes from freezing without heat. If you are, you've got a vacant property and you don't want the pipes to freeze, you definitely have to do number 2. You've got to turn the water off at a shutoff main. And I would also say you should run the furnace just at a low level to keep that from freezing. But let's say you don't have a furnace, or you don't want to run the furnace because you don't want to heat the whole house. That's fine as long as you have the water shut off and you've got it all drained down. Then you could go with something like a space heater at a vacant property right near that main and just heat that area. But be careful with that, because you don't want a space heater. They can potentially cause fires if they're not used properly. And they do tell you to keep an eye on those things when you've got them in a house. So you got to make sure you have the right setup, a safe space heater, and all that. And if you are going to do that, you just got to keep an eye on the fact that it will still use electricity. So you may not get as big of a savings as you think you're going to get with a space heater versus just keeping that HVAC system on a low level to do that. Now, with a space heater, if I was going to have a vacant property, I would shut off the water. I would then drain the water, and I'd probably get one of those like oil style space heaters that you can get. So it's an electric oil space heater. It doesn't like blow air out everywhere. It just radiates the heat. And I'd put one of those right next to where the pipes are. And I would do that because it's a safer design really than one of those blowing elements where you could get dust and accumulation in it if you're not going to be there for a long time. So that would probably be my recommendation for doing that. Now, there's one other option that people use, and it's more of a commercial option. It's not something that you would necessarily get at like a Home Depot or Lowe's, but you'll probably find it on Amazon. We'll include a link to it. It's called a heat trace. So in commercial buildings and construction, a lot of times this is used. And what a heat trace is basically it is just a thermal resistor wrap that goes around a pipe. So it's like a one wire that has a resistance to it. And when electric current's applied, it's going to heat things up a little bit. So what you do is you wrap this heat trace wire around a pipe, it heats up, and then you insulate over the heat trace wire. And a lot of people use that for outdoor systems to keep those pipes from freezing. If you've got like a chiller or a condenser or outdoor units that use water glycol, and obviously depends on the variation of amount of glycol that you would have in that unit, whether it's going to freeze or not. But the point is, people use these heat traces to prevent pipes from freezing, and they use a heck of a lot less energy than a space heater does. So you could do that, but that is a longer term, more expensive solution, and something you're not just probably going to go pick up at Home Depot and Lowe's right away. You need to find something that's actually ready to put on the pipes, and then you got to insulate that pipe. So let's say you were going to have a vacant property for like 6 months, a year, and it's in a cold climate. what you could do is when you leave, you shut off the water, you drain the water valve, and then you make sure that you've got this heat trace pipe on and you've got it wrapped, and that heat trace is going to keep it just at a level, just enough to make sure that it doesn't freeze. I would still monitor the temperature with a remote monitoring system in some way if I was going to do that for a property I wasn't going to be at a long time. But that is a way that you could safely make a vacant property safe from having your pipes freezing without having to worry about a space heater, without having to worry about heating with HVAC. And that would be the way to go. Because those heat traces, the actual ones that are rated for this kind of a thing, they are very safe, they use very low energy, and it's something that you could do. So you still would need electricity in order for this to work, but that is another option that we don't have listed there, and a little bit more of a non-DIY thing where you just have to search for the right equipment to make that work. So thanks for watching, and we will see you next time. Please like and subscribe.